Yes, we can see.
Okay, good. Okay, so this first kind of module is an overview of fundraising. And you'll note that there's a difference here, and I'm using the word philanthropy, and they're using the word fundraising. So in my opinion, I think the word fundraising is a very transactional term. Philanthropy is much more strategic. So the role of the fundraiser is to put all of these pieces together. And so we are going to be talking about the important role that philanthropy plays in organizations and those key motivations about why people give. We'll talk about the primary sources of contributions, ethics and accountability, what an integrated development program looks like, and which essential components aid success. Fundraising profession as a career, thinking about those key qualities for success, and a basic path for personal and professional development in the field. I'm scrolling through my notes here. So by the end of this, you should be able to really understand the culture of philanthropy and the role that it plays in organizations, understand why people give, think about those primary sources of contribution, think about those essential components of a development program, an integrated one. And you will come out of this just, I mean, it's so great. Obviously, I'm passionate about it. So I would like to hear from you how you define philanthropy. So you can throw it out in the chat if you would like, or speak. How do you define philanthropy?
Georgia, I would define philanthropy as giving out money, whatever amount, for a worthy cause. Yeah, like for example, I figure we have challenges with access to water, and I may decide to give, for that particular cause. So that's how I would define philanthropy. Thank you.
Anybody else?
There's some in the chat as well. Goodwill contribution from Betty. And here he says, wealthy individuals who make generous donations to causes that they are passionate about. And SE, giving of your own free will without expecting personal returns.
Yeah. And those are all wonderful personalized definitions of that. So, and we have here more. Amy?
Erasmus comes in with philanthropy refers to the act of promoting the welfare and well-being of others through voluntary actions, typically by providing financial resources, time, or expertise to support charitable causes and organizations. It involves the desire to make a positive impact and bring about meaningful change in society. And then we have Patricia, who says the act of providing sponsorship to a purpose without expectation of personal benefit to satisfy their passion.
Yeah. So the generally accepted definition for philanthropy is private action for the voluntary good. And that is what our research field has adapted as our official definition of philanthropy, because it kind of encapsulates everything: time, talent, and treasure. So the rewards are giving are many and varied, and those are strong drivers of continuing contribution. So as a result, relationships play a key role in maintaining a culture of philanthropy. The scope of the fundraising industry and its role in supporting causes and providing employment for thousands of people, it has become a professional niche area within nonprofit, non-governmental organizations, domestic or international, and private foundations. So like this desire to create change, social change, and social impact, increased social impact, has, and pro-social behaviors help us do that, right? So we're getting all the right people on the bus. And now we have this professional field. So so why and how people give. Pamela King and Renee Beckers are two scholars from the Netherlands, and they have written and conducted in 2011. They did a systematic meta-analysis of all fundraising research, peer-reviewed research, and then kind of developed and published these extraordinary. My students get so upset when I assign them to read these articles because they're a meta-analysis, and there was special dispensation given by the journals to allow them to have more space in the journal. So normally we're talking about maybe a 20-page academic research paper. And they wrote 60 pages, single spaced. I mean, it was an incredible feat for them to look back at all of the research on pro-social behaviors and identify why and how people give. So some people give, why people give? They're motivated, right? Knowing why people give makes it easier for us to lay the groundwork for the activities and the different strategies to meet the needs of the nonprofit organization. And there's like 40,000 reasons why people will make a donation. But at the end of the day, it's an individual who is making that decision. And it doesn't matter if the individual is, you know, board president of the community foundation, and they're choosing in their board meeting which nonprofit to make a donation to. It doesn't matter if it's a corporate sponsor, right? There are individuals that are making these decisions. And so the role of the professional fundraiser is to maintain these relationships. And then develop a stewardship and solicitation, segmented solicitation process that moves people to make that commitment. So, major gifts are large donations to your organization. And how I personally define major gifts, because it's different for every person, and then also what a nonprofit organization considers a major gift, right? So all of that is existing in context, right? What is major to me may not be the same as what is major to, you know, a celebrity who has a lot of money and they're, you know, making 6-figure gifts or more. So my rule of thumb for deciding what a major gift is, that for the donor, if they have to think about whether or not the check is going to bounce at the bank, right? Then it's not a major gift. Or then it is a major gift. If they don't have to think about it and they're just giving that money out, then it's not, like, that's not a major gift for them. So know that it's not universally applied. Corporate and foundation giving, we talked about this, right? So people give, individuals give. And during recessions or national crisis, people actually still give. So in 2021, in the United States, we estimate, based on a national sample, and this is research that comes out of Giving USA, which is a think tank that's housed in the Lilly School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. And every year they publish new data in this longitudinal study that they're working on, where they're every year they're asking and talking with people in the study about their giving. So through 9/11, through the Great Recession in the United States, tough times, people still care about the people in their community and they still give. So in terms of donor giving options, you'll see here at the top of this flow chart that the donor can choose to give money, cash, or they can give an asset. So when we break it down between cash, it can either be unrestricted, which means the organization is free to use the donation in any way they best see fit. They can also make restricted gifts. And so in terms of restricted gifts, that is something that is, if a donor puts a restriction on it, they say, I only want to buy tricycles for the daycare. The organization in the US is bound by law to use the money in the way the donor intended. So, and then the same thing for assets, restricted and unrestricted. And assets really are, we're talking about stock, or they give a piece of art to a museum, land, real estate, all kinds of things. And then within, we have current and deferred options. So is it restricted or unrestricted? And are you giving it today? Or are you setting up something to give later? So there are just many ways donors can choose to give to your organization. Far more than a cash contribution during an annual giving campaign. And it gets more complicated as you go down this chart from cash to restricted to deferred. The complexity of the legal arrangement increases. So, some key concepts in fundraising are research. And so finding out what your stakeholders and your donors want and need. Marketing. Getting the word out to build awareness about the opportunity for people to give and the donor base. Relationships. Building and maintaining those relationships are key to success. And ethics and accountability, ensuring your reputation is beyond reproach. You are scandal-free, you are using the funds as intended, and you are ethical about how you choose to frame the opportunity to give, and how you choose to frame the opportunity to give. So in terms of research, we're providing information, making sure that you're allocating the resources appropriately. It supports planning and evaluation. And you're able to rate kind of and prioritize donors. So the roles of marketing and fundraising are these things. And relationships is really just the key, the heart of fundraising. So if you're maintaining relationships with people who potentially could be interested in donating to your organization, you're going to be adding those prospects to your donor base. You're going to be developing active and regular donors. You'll be supporting other types and sources of contributions. You'll be engaging with stakeholders. You'll be integrating your relationships and your donors. You'll be integrating all of that with the knowledge and the research that you do, and getting to know prospects and what their interests are, supporting effective stewardship of those funds. And here we see kind of the first mention of this idea of stewardship. And so I look at stewardship as a cultivation of those. So if we are in a garden and if we ignore it throughout the growing season, it's not going to produce. And the same thing applies here to donors. If they only hear from you when you're asking them for money, it's not integrated, because you should be stewarding and cultivating all of that. So the Association of Fundraising Professionals has an international code of ethics, which is a key component of our practice in fundraising, that we have this shared set of rules, essentially. And here they are. And they actually have also, AFP has put together material on the donor bill of rights. So what donors have a right to know and expect. And then we have these rules of the road for professional fundraisers. And this allows us to continue to build trust and confidence with donors, make sure that everything is accounted for, that donor privacy, if they want to be anonymous or don't want to have their name in the back of the playbill, you know, their privacy and their rights are maintained, and that you're communicating the impact of the work that the nonprofit is doing. And then executing those programs as promised, and you do all these things and donors just keep giving. It's so exciting.
Jen, I'm sorry to interrupt here. I missed a comment or a question in the chat a little while ago. There's a question from Betty about a deferred gift. So this may be a good time to integrate it or to circle back after.
All right, so deferred would be, my mother, I'm on vacation right now with my oldest daughter, and it's a little trip that I take just for myself to refresh after the semester. And now that she's a college student, she can go with me on vacation. So when I was visiting with my mom last week, she told me, "Do you have a copy of my will?" And I said, "No, you haven't given me one." She goes, "Oh, I got these for you." And she brings out my stepfather's will and her will. She says, "I want you to have these." And in there, they delineate where they want their assets upon death, how they want them distributed. Do they want to make donations to a nonprofit organization? And they do. They're very active in giving and philanthropy with the Catholic Church and the Diocese of Charleston. And that's where they want their money to go. So that's clearly stated in the will. So deferred means they've made the commitment, trust. We've built trust. They've made a commitment to give, but the actual gift only comes at a later date. And so that is the difference between current or deferred. Does that work, Betty?
Sorry, I think I'd lost you a little bit.
Okay. So deferred means that the donation is coming later. So the actual money is coming later. But they set it up today.
Oh, I haven't had that kind of experience. That's why I thought people do post-dated checks. Like you can write a check to someone and say you can cash it on at the end of the month, but I didn't think that we have deferred donors, except I had an experience with Agra this time, and they said I would like to donate to or to sponsor this event, but my money is available, the funds are available at a certain date. It's just that I probably didn't ask for commitment at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they were saying they didn't have funds available then, but they would avail the funds a little later. But then now the event is passed, and I don't know how to then say, I guess I would have to redirect the funds to something else.
Correct. And so it may not be, so if they want to give it a specific date later on, you can actually set up an agreement and close the deal today and then receive the funds later. And that could be a year later. It could be upon death. It could be upon liquidation of a family's or a company's assets. Or in the US, nonprofits are required to, when nonprofits go bankrupt or out of business, they have to take all of their assets and give them to another nonprofit organization who has a similar mission.
All right, thank you. Yeah,
You're welcome.
that sounds good.
So deferred, it comes later. You ask now, the gift comes later. And then it's also a more complex giving arrangement because maybe there's a contract or a last will and testament that is involved. So, and here is, that was the donor bill of rights and our code of ethics for practice. So accountability is important. And you have to think about the public's confidence level in your organization and in your mission. And you should have quality programs, ethical behavior of your staff, and effective stewardship of the assets that have been given to you, whether they're time, talent, or treasure. So I'm sure that you guys have already talked about mission and purpose statements and your mission as an organization. So they describe the reason for the organization's existence. You also tracking and reporting mechanisms ensure that donors' intentions are honored and that all reporting is managed effectively and efficiently. Regular communication with stakeholders at all levels helps ensure they know the organization is living up to their responsibilities, and having specific strategies and action plans in place and actively used contributes to that accountability. Potential donors and others who are interested in your mission and your organization could be seeking information from third-party watchdog websites. In the US, we have GuideStar and Charity Navigator have kind of led the way with very accurate information about all of the nonprofits that are headquartered in the United States. This may be something to pursue on your continent and in your countries, so that you have accountability for the time, talent, and treasure. And then in the US, we use the IRS Form 990, which is basically a reporting and accountability mechanism with the US government. And in Canada, they use the T301 or 3010B, and it's just a similar government report that organizations have to complete every year. And they have to make that easily available to donors. And that's part of the donor bill of rights, but it's also nonprofit organizations in the US, while they organize and come about as a nonprofit organization. So what is a common fundamental need of potential donors and volunteers? Are there any ideas?
And I don't know if you would have time for it in your presentation, but this may be a good moment for a breakout if
Okay,
you want to talk in a small group.
okay. Do you know how to manipulate that, randomly assign people?
All right, so I just created new ones. I'm gonna open all the rooms. And everybody has been invited to a room. And so Jen, can you just restate your question before folks go in?
Yes, what is a common fundamental need of potential donors, of your current donors, and your volunteers?
Mhm. Yeah. And it may even be helpful to think about that in terms of yourself. If you're going to donate, what is it that you need? All right, looks like some folks have started joining. Okay, and how much time do you want to give them?
I don't, 3 minutes?
Okay. And there are 4 people in each room.
Okay.
Thomas and Rich, if you are here, let me know if you're having any trouble getting to a breakout room. How was the discussion?
I jumped in one, and I'm going to jump in the next one.
Okay, should I give it a little more time than 3 minutes, you think?
Did you want to, can you jump in? Yes. Can you jump in room 3?
Just see how it's going.
Yeah, and if they're confused, then you can,
Sure. I think I can. Actually, as the host, I don't know if I can jump in rooms. Mm. Hmm. Okay, did you get my broadcast message?
no.
That the rooms are closing in a minute.
Okay.
So I'm gonna
Great.
bring folks back here. In room 3, they were talking. They're clear about the question.
Good.
How was your room?
It was good. Impact.
Impact?
Yeah.
That's what they want.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to see a difference. Okay, I'm going to close the rooms. I think it automatically gives them 60 seconds to come back. We'll have a few more minutes. You can actually automatically create the amount of time in a room.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I needed to perhaps do that in the beginning. It's been a little while since I've spent a lot of time with breakout rooms, and Zoom continues to update, makes things a little different.
So could each group, are they back?
Not yet.
Okay.
Still waiting for some folks.
I'm going to get my cup of coffee.
Okay, they're back.
So for each group, could someone share what you talked about, your key fundamental need?
My group, this is Betty, my group had several, so I don't know whether we should just give one.
Well, just prioritize them maybe.
Yeah, I think the first one is that what they give is aligned to their purpose or a cause they care about. And then very quickly, they need communication on how their funds are spent or how their resources are utilized, risk, and that they have sectoral orientation, for example, in climate change or to health, wash, water and sanitation. Thank you.
Next.
Okay, so this is group 4, James here. We talked about two things. First one being that they would want to see their money or their funds work where exactly they should be used or utilized where they should be. So for instance, on the yearly project, if the focus is on training young people and engaging alumni to make an impact, that is where a donor expects exactly where the money should go or what it should go into, and not to maybe do, let's say, outreach that would not bring in the numbers you expect to recruit to train, unless it's a part or it's subsumed under any of these parts or these two functions. So if the main aim is to achieve A, they would want to see the money or the funds put to use such that it's used for A. Then the second bit is donors would want to also see their money or their funds impact lives on the other end. So we see that as a tunnel. On one side is where the water is poured, and the other side is an outlet that feeds a garden. So as the water is poured in there, we should see new life sprouting from the garden. So it comes in as funds. At the end of the day, young people are trained. They go out there to impact communities. And out of that, you know that though this donor mainly is into A, their funds have gone into training young people who are now helping rural communities to get onto the national grid helping others to learn livelihood skills or skills that through which they can earn some living and all that. So when that happens, you know that yes, I'm putting in A, B, C, but it's giving me these results apart from what else is anticipated. So these were the two that we discussed in group 4.
Next.
So I actually do not know if Nick will come in. If not that, I will need to speak. So we also raised, because a lot has been mentioned on the purposeful expenditure in connection to the money that is being given to us. We also raised the common needs of our donors, being the provision of leadership skills among young people to impact their lives positively, which of course we discussed the employment it brings to young people from every alumni we do have on the program. And then we also look at their needs for accurate data and then real-time data as far as the program is concerned, so that it helps them to make the decisions and then probably the informed decisions they want to make at the end. I think these are the two things. There are three, but the money aspect has been shared across. So these are the two things we also looked at. Thank you.
Then you're muted.
We've gone through all the groups.
I don't think so. We have a few.
No, there is one. Glorine needs to go. Glorine.
Okay, yeah. So for our group, most of the points have been mentioned, and for us, we looked at this from a general perspective and not specifically based on what we do for our projects. So one of the things that we said is we look at the intended purpose for the resource that you're providing. It can influence how you consider the charity, and then the impact that it will create. What the resource that you're giving, whether it's financial or a different kind of resource, and the impact that it will create. We also said it goes beyond financial resource. It can also be human resource. It can be in-kind support provided as charity. And then we also mentioned the values from the perspective of both the person, the recipient, and the person giving, and how these values align. So it's a consideration that you make when you're getting into charity. And then the last one was actualization. When you want to get into to give for charity, one of the things that you look at is how does it contribute to your own personal needs or your organization needs. Thank you.
And we still have room, and thank you for that. We still have room 5 and 6.
Yeah, so this is Caroline for room 6. Yes, so far, everything that we discussed has been mentioned, but there's 2 more that I need to chip in here. It's also about relationships. The donor is looking out for relationship, not just giving the money and not hearing anything from you. So if I donate, at least I expect that I'll be engaged within the organizational activities. If there are activities concerning the project, I could be invited just to build that relationship. So there's relationship there, feedback as to how the money is being used and the results that is generating. And then appreciation, the donor expects appreciation from the receiving end. So this is the summary of what we discussed for group 6.
Great, thank you. And I think group 5 still needs to go.
This is group 5 from Patricia. I speak on behalf of group 5. I think most of the points have already been mentioned. But then for us, we critically looked at accountability in that the donor has parted something in expectation of certain results. So it's always acceptable or needful for you to go back to them to prove to them how you have put the funds or whatever facility or tools or equipment that were given or at your disposal, how you have put them to use and how helpful they have been, and what the subsequent needs are, so that they become parts of the problem solving and not just parting money or funds. Thank you. So that goes back to the relationship aspect Caroline spoke about.
Thank you. I think that's all the groups, Jen.
Okay. Well, immediately what came to mind for me was I want to be thanked, right? I want to be thanked. I want to know that my gift is appreciated and valued. I served on the board of the Girl Scouts of the Virginia Skyline Council. I was on their board as a board member. And I have just a tremendous amount of passion for girl leadership, right? And that's what Girl Scouts is all about. And so, in fact, I'm in Savannah, Georgia today. And my daughter and I came down to stay with a friend, tour Savannah, but more specifically, we wanted to tour the Juliette Gordon Lowe house. And Juliette Gordon Lowe is the founder of Girl Scouts and Girl Guides worldwide. She traveled all over the world, starting all of these chapters and creating opportunities for girls to lead. I'm super passionate about that. But I served on the board after volunteering for 13 years as a troop leader, so leading my own group of girls. And the board experience was very unfulfilling. I felt like I just had to make the minimum board gift, and then that was it. I didn't feel valued. I didn't feel appreciated. They did not actively engage me. It was challenging for me because I kept trying to engage and they just weren't receptive. So ultimately that ended up in me leaving the board. So I'm no longer on the board. I still have Girl Scouts, but I'm no longer on the board of this organization and giving at a significant level because they didn't engage me. I didn't feel valued. I didn't feel appreciated. Someone has a question. They have their hand raised.
Yeah, that's me. It was just a small story I shared in the breakout group, and I just thought I might share it here as well. Just two minutes. And it was an encounter I had several years ago, maybe about 5 years ago. I was out on a workshop and I was in a hotel at breakfast table. And this elderly gentleman, very elderly, he must have been over 80, comes to sit beside me. I think he just needed to talk to someone that morning. And what he was saying was that he was very, very wealthy. He started out very poor. I think he stowed away from Ghana, got into Germany and moved on and did very well, made a lot of money. And now his problem was that he could see that he was getting old and he was worried about who he would leave his wealth to. And he was telling me that he had 2 children, a son and a daughter. He didn't want to leave his wealth to his son because he felt the son was wayward And he didn't want to leave his wealth, the wealth with his daughter, because he felt she was married to someone he didn't trust. And he was concerned that, so here am I getting older, and my family are just waiting to get their hands on my money. And that was the first time I got the sense that this could be a real problem, because for him, it was not just the money. It was a representation of his sweat, his his toil over all these years. And he really wanted to be assured that when he passes on, it gets into. And so this exercise we did reminded me of that story, that, when someone is giving money, philanthropists, they really want to be, it's not just the money they are giving, it's their life's work and toil and blood and sweat. And so they want to be sure that it goes into hands that are worthy of it. And I think that's why all these things we talked about become so real. They want to trust that it will be used for what they expected it to be used for. They want to have a relationship with the person who gets it. And just as Dr. Taylor said, they want to feel appreciated. So this exercise just reminded me, because I was really moved by that brief conversation I had with that man. Yeah. Yeah.
Jen, you're muted.
I think that's exciting. The opportunity is for him to give to Yali, right? So hidden in here in your discussion with that man in the cafe, hand him a brochure, hand him a card, and talk to him about the impact that your organization is having. And then it becomes a relationship over time that you're managing, and it could present in current giving, today's dollars, or it could be, as you described, that he's thinking about a last will and testament, and he would like to, liquidate his assets and give to Yali in a planned gift, deferred. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. So that common fundamental need. So there are some privacy principles that are important. And in Canada, they have the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, which was developed by the Canadian Standards Association, and it highlights 10 principles of fair information practices. And these principles are good for any organization. And what they get at is just keeping that idea of stewardship and cultivation in mind. Stewardship begins at the top with a board philosophy and policy that a formal stewardship program is a priority. And without this continuity that this formality provides, a stewardship program can end up sporadically applied or become less important over time as volunteers and staff leadership change. So the confidence of donors and other stakeholders and constituents is built through effective stewardship of the time and the talent and the treasure that has been entrusted to your organization. And in turn, that helps ensure opportunities for future giving, right? To continue to grow those resources. So as an ethical fundraiser, you're able to establish and maintain personal and organizational credibility. And that mindset contributes to this idea of integrated development. So we use this tool and called the Pyramid of Giving. I'll lay it on you. So annual giving, these are donations that come once or multiple times throughout the year. They are smaller in size, but it's part of annual giving. So we're collecting money today. We don't have to think about it. We just are giving, and you have your first time annual givers, so the first people who make donations to your organization. Then you work and utilize that stewardship process for repeat annual giving, right? So we want donors to renew their gift. So the integrated fundraising program begins with a development plan and integrates these various types of giving in the pyramid. We also have major giving. So, or special projects, right? So maybe the church wants a new roof. And so they are going to go out and raise money specifically for the new roof at the church. And so these things are considered, types of things are considered capital giving. So you're building, repairing, investing at a significant level in assets for the organization. So this pyramid reflects the stages through which the donor moves through their trust, their commitment, and their commitment increase, right? So the donations are getting larger as you move to the top. And so as you move up the pyramid with an organization as a donor, the organization, you're maturing as a donor, and the organization is increasing the level of, it necessitates a more complex arrangement. For example, planned giving. And we talked about that with the gentleman in the cafe. So the next concept that I would like to lay down on you is this house of philanthropy. And this is just kind of a cool visual learning tool. So you have this culture of philanthropic and benevolent, charitable, generous culture of philanthropy as your foundation, right? Your core values, your mission. We have volunteers. We provide services as an organization. We solicit donors and they make that initial transaction. And there are some types of goods and services involved. And then here on our roof are like these small cash gifts, ongoing gifts, one-time large gifts, multi-year transformational gifts. So someone may make a commitment to say, we're going to give $100,000 to your organization, and I'm going to pay you $10,000 this year and $10,000 every year after for the next 9 years. So it's a way to give money over time. And then in the cafe example, we were hearing about intergenerational giving. And so that is giving where you're liquidating assets at the end of life. So the elements of an integrated program include the development plan itself, a mix of, and I say vehicles right here, but we're not actually talking about cars. We're just talking about different opportunities, right? So maybe there's a sponsorship for a conference or sponsorship for a special guest speaker, or maybe you're funding travel for alumni to come to the US in the Mandela Fellowship, right? So you also have to be understanding, and the organization, volunteers, staff, board members have to really own the integrated development plan. You have to have an operating budget. So we have to know what are all of the expenses and what are all of, where are all the sources of revenue coming from. Then we have to have clear fundraising goals, objectives, and strategies. And so the concept here is that you have an idea, you're planning all the things to support that idea, and you're building trust, you're communicating impact, and then donors are making a commitment action. So some of the key qualities for success for professional fundraisers. Empathy. So fundraisers really need to be able to put themselves in the shoes of the donor to see things from their perspective. And when you do that, just like we did in that exercise, it brings success. Becoming a fundraising professional, there are tons of opportunities to learn and grow in this niche field. This job as a professional fundraiser is pretty much recession proof, right? Because if you can raise the money, you will always be employed. So you don't have to worry about losing your job, because that's the last thing a board of directors is going to say. We're going to let go of the development director. They're not going to say that. So you can learn on the job like you're all doing now. You can seek out professional development programs, and AFP does have some online courses that you can take. You can identify a mentor and build that relationship with a mentor, someone who has more experience in fundraising. And then there are just a bazillion print and online resources out there. Other ways to build your skills and experience include volunteering at another nonprofit organization. Strategic networking. So there may be professional groups within each of your respective countries that are focused on building capacity and resource mobilization in this area. So strategic networking. And, you know, I mentioned that I would join the business membership organization, the Chamber of Commerce, every time that I moved. I would join as an individual because I wanted to be strategic about my networking. So instead of wasting my time just applying for jobs that I see in the paper, I was being strategic about it. I was getting in front of them in a professional environment. So in terms of next steps in your professional development, we are going to briefly talk about developing an integrated fundraising program. So what does that look like on an annual basis? So, of course, everything begins with your mission and your vision. And I like to think about mission and vision like this. A mission statement is what you do. A vision statement is the world after your organization has existed in it. Right? So we have a sexual assault and child advocacy center in Harrisonburg. Your mission statement should be short and sweet. Should be no more than maybe 15 words. The Collins Center I worked with them to refine their mission statement. Their mission statement was a paragraph, and it needed to be shortened down so that everybody could remember right at the top of their head, even after they've maybe had too many glasses of wine, they know what the mission of the organization is, right? They can rattle it off in an elevator pitch. And so we reduced it from a paragraph to, we strive to eliminate sexual violence and its impact in our community. So they went from a paragraph to that really brief thing. And then their vision statement was a community without sexual violence and a community that supports survivors. So mission, what we do, vision, how the world is after you've existed in it. So what do you need to lead the development process? You need a strategic plan. And I know you guys have already talked about that. The process is as important as the plan itself. The process of taking assessment, of thinking big, thinking strategically, pulling back from service delivery and just thinking, okay, what is this that we want to do?
Jen, are you there? Your screen is frozen.
And so what it out outlines your goals, objectives, strategy.
Hey, Jen. Okay. It looks like we just lost connectivity. And we have about 15 more minutes. We give her 30 seconds to see if she comes back. And if not,
Okay.
let's see. All right, I don't see her coming back in. So at this point, let's just open it up for questions and thoughts about what it is that you've heard today, things you want to know more about, and specific ideas that are showing up for what you may be able to do to start thinking more about how to create a fundraising ecosystem within your RLC. What are some thoughts? Eddie. Betty, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes, I think you may want to actually turn your camera.
Yeah.
There you go. Now you're moving.
Yeah, I probably needed a little more light. Yeah, so I think for me, this is a great interest. You can imagine I've been glued to a seat, but I think one of the biggest things that are coming up, I think for me, the most important one was asking, what do donors really look for, or how you put it? If you are the one who is giving your funds or your time, what would you want with that kind of resource? So I found that completely important, because when you understand that, it ties in then with stewardship. And so I wondered whether one person is enough to steward a relationship, whether there is probably a way that probably managers would have. Of course, donors want to be dealing with one person because you don't want messages coming from so many people, but is it possible that you can have if you have very many partners, you can have different people in the team having to be relationship managers on a certain partner, because you want to be sure that those are the people who attend the events, they are the people, so that you have
Betty, you're coming in and out. You might want to turn
completely
your on
and probably a person that the person who is
have more connectivity. So Betty, we can't hear you right now.
okay.
Let's try again with the screen off.
Yeah, so I was saying that maybe because now we're running what we call demand-driven partnerships, so that we have a partnership, for example, that is very oriented to learning and curriculum. Would then be advisable to have the learning and curriculum person also closely connected to this donor or partner, because it means that we probably have warmer relationships that way, so that we can be, because stewarding becomes very important to me. I think it was one of the big items that came out for me, like having a strategy around how to steward all the partners to make sure they are thanked enough and they're appreciated enough, and they're, so maybe having additional stuff around stewarding a partner or stewardship around a partner, and of course understanding exactly what donors look for. So, or what is donor motivation? For me, that was key. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. So Jen, you just got back, and Betty was just sharing some observations and questions, particularly around what is that process for stewarding donors? Is it one person that's in relationship with them? Are there multiple people? And Betty, if I'm getting this wrong, let me know. What are the different roles, in terms of keeping that relationship going and healthy?
Well, in my opinion, it's everybody in the organization is keeping that relationship going. And with the use of customer relationship management software, you're able to track that relationship. So I could log in to Amy's file in the customer relationship management and share details of the lunch we had the other day or the telephone call. And I would just put those notes in the file. And then maybe the executive director has a board meeting and they have a little conversation in the elevator afterwards. Then the executive director would log back in and keep those notes in there so that you're seeing all of the interactions with the donor. As the kind of strategic leader of fundraising, the development director, the person who's assigned primary responsibilities in the organization are creating these charitable giving opportunities. That's the person that leads and manages. So they're doing kind of both roles. And they're also the keeper, those development staff are the keeper of the data about those donors so that you're able to get their email address and you're able to, include them on an e-newsletter. You're able to give them the opportunity to participate in events, whether online or in person, and kind of an emerging field of revenue for charitable giving in organizations is what's called third-party fundraisers. And that's when you have a donor who's super excited about your mission and they go out and they have their own fundraiser to benefit YALI. And that's exciting, that peer-to-peer fundraising.
And I know that Essie has a question. I just wanted to add something quickly. And this was part of our conversations when the team came here to JMU. And our fundraisers at JMU were talking about how important it was to get to know somebody's interest and connect that person with somebody else in the institution who has that interest. So, for example, if Glorine, you met somebody who was really excited about entrepreneurship and innovation. So I know that George is really excited and knowledgeable about that. So that may be an opportunity to make that connection with somebody else in the system who could perhaps better engage around that particular interest.
Mm-hmm. And so the development director becomes the facilitator of multiple relationships between the donor and the organization.
But Essie, I know you had a question.
That's a great question.
Your hand was up.
Yeah. So it was as Dr. Taylor was speaking about having a kind of login system so that you can quickly put down notes from each engagement you have with a potential donor so that anybody else in the organization can read it up and can therefore pick up from where you leave off if need be. And I was thinking that I think currently the way we try to do this is by copying everybody in emails. So you're engaging a partner and then you copy everybody else that, I mean, ought to know. I mean, I think, yeah, as you build the relationship, it may get to a point where you need to do in-person meetings or of the sort. And I think that's where, you know, the email copying everybody may not suffice. So having this kind of a system, I mean, I'd really like to know more about it. Like, is there an app of a sort? Like, is it there that we can just take it and use it? Or is it something you need to build per organization? Yeah.
So the software that I have recommended, highly recommend to Yali, is a software called Bloomerang. And so our steering group is working on that. So you can get a mobile app for your tablet or your phone, and you'll be able to, wherever you are, that you have internet access, you can log in and put notes in real quick. Right? Or if they have a question about whether their check was deposited or not. Was it received? You know, you can pull it up right then and you'll see it was received on X day. It was taken to the bank on Y day, and we sent a thank you letter out and a thank you email. It may be a special, you know, impact video link in that email. And you'll see all the things tied to that one donor that the organization is pushing information to. Right? And to and about. And then you can store, like, so say you see an article in your community media that is, you know, in the newspaper or something, and they're talking about your donor. It's a feature on your donor. You would get a copy, right? Cut out their article, tape it down to a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, right, with Scotch tape. And then you scan that back in to the system as a PDF. And so you're constantly gathering data about your donors. And so you don't have to do it. I mean, the level of complexity increases, right? As the gifts get larger. So it is fantastic, and it has definitely been a game changer. When I first started in this field, we were keeping handwritten notes in manila folders in a file drawer. And then every time I sent out a thank you letter or a card, I had to go to the copy machine and make a copy and then put that in the manila folder. But I didn't necessarily have those donor files with me when I was like out in town, you know, making ask. And so it was really important as technology progressed that we all have instant access to this information. And then, you know, I know that Yali has been talking about integrating solicitation and donor recognition and donor record keeping. As you think about centralization of this function for Yali, it'll be really important to choose a software that everyone can use and everyone can have, all the right people have access to.
And Jen, a final question. I say final because we just have 3 more minutes here. Just came in on the chat. I think this is a great question. In regards to Yali, I know from my experience working with Yali, I feel the common notion is that Yali is well funded and is always in the position of being the giving organization. I'm wondering what strategies would be used to change this mindset of stakeholders and others who know of Yali's existence and how Yali works. And this was Adjoa asking a question.
Right. And so what I think will be key is that we're going to start at that bottom of the pyramid of giving, right? Because right now we don't have very many donors. And so, you need to get those first time donors. And so you need to think about who are the people who are super passionate about your mission. They have firsthand knowledge and experience with your mission. And they're excited about you. Who are those people? These are people you already know and have existing relationships with, and they are waiting for the opportunity to make a small gift. We just haven't asked them. And that is the number one reason why people don't give. So you have to demonstrate need, and then you have to follow up with an ask, and then you have to thank, and steward and cultivate and communicate impact. You have to do all of those things. So for me, even though people, oh, you have money, you don't need my money, right? I think that, if you're able to operationalize what that $10 would go to, what is $10 going to be funding, right? Is it going to be, supporting a specific event? Is it going to be towards a scholarship or towards travel expenses for students from your country? You have to be specific about it in that very real way. I think the last piece of that is that, so you're being specific, but then you're also communicating the fact that, we're not just an initiative of the US State Department. We're not. We're our own organization. We have our own dreams and ideas. And, you're moving forward to diversify your resources so that should that funding from the US not be available anymore, you have a whole plan for sustainability in your organization. You have an entire plan for that. Because you're diversifying. If you get money from lots of different resources, if one dries up, you're more likely able to survive as an organization. But if you're only dependent on one donor, and that donor, for whatever reason, doesn't give, then your organization goes out of business. So diversifying resources is critically important. So I think the most excited and connected donors are going to be your alumni. Did you love your experience with Yali? What are you doing today with the leadership skills that you used? $10 pays for a textbook for new students that are coming into the Yali leadership program. Would you like to give back? And so, Amy, I think there's some stuff in the chat. There's one large comment in the chat.
So that was the question that we just
Okay.
addressed, and we're actually at the end of our time. So I think this is a good
Great
moment.
place to end.
Yes, to button up, and I know it's late for a number of people on the call. So thank you to everyone who has stayed with us and yes, and remained on the call and in the topic. And Jen, thank you for coming in and offering your experience and knowledge about fundraising. And this is obviously an important topic to this group and this program. And I think a lot of good ideas and foundational pieces that really can be built on from here on out. So thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome, and thank you. I will send a case study to you, Amy, if you could share that with the participants, and if they could read that case study by Thursday, my next session, we can begin our next session talking about it.
Great. And if you could also get the slides from today, then we could share those with the group.
Yes.
And we'll have those very short evaluations that we're going to send out at the end of today. So you can give us some feedback about the 2 sessions. And tomorrow we're going to come back, same time, same place, and talk about empowering performances, strategies for motivating, recognizing, and improving individual performance, and resource mobilization. So those will be our classes tomorrow, and please reach out if you have any questions between now and then. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day or night.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jenny. See you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank
to
you.
you.
I'll see you tomorrow.
See you. Bye.
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 Bye.